Hey guys, it's Bryce, and today I'm going to be showing you a few different variations of the Scholar's Mate and how to crush them. Here we go. So, for the very first Scholar's Mate we have, it goes e4, e5, bishop to c4, eyeing up this weak f7 square, and following that, black will play c5 works. You could also play knight c6. Both are good developing moves. We're going to see white goes queen f3. So this is setting up Scholar's Mate, where queen wants to take on f7, backed up by the bishop. So with both of these pieces lined up to hit this pawn, and with only one defender, and that is the king, queen takes f7 is checkmate. So a good defense against this, in fact the best one, is just knight f6. Very simple, it's another developing move, and it starts to target this e4 pawn early on in the game. From here, there's a couple different ways that white can go, whether they want to continue the Scholar's Mate attack, or whether they just want to retreat. But here is how you simply defend against the blunt Scholar's Mate attack. The second Scholar's Mate attack goes something like this. We're going to see e4, e5, queen to f3. You could also see bishop to c4. That's also another starting move. We're going to see black preemptively blocking the Scholar's Mate by playing knight to f6. A very good move. Then white plays bishop c4. So white still is going for that f7 square, but they have a different plan to get around to it. So here it is. Let's say black plays a good developing move, knight c6. Black is going to go for a little trap here, where they're going to play g4. The idea is for white to push this pawn to g5, and they're going to try to get this knight to move. If the knight moves somewhere, then the f7 pawn is no longer defended, and the queen can take with checkmate. So, in order to defend against this, let's just say black overlooks it for the first move and they play bishop c5. But even when the pawn is pushed to g5, there's still a way to defend against this, and that is playing knight to d4. This has a double purpose. It hits the queen, and it hits the c2 pawn, which is a fork on the king and the rook. So the only way to defend both the queen and to defend against the fork is to play queen to d1. Now the Scholar's Mate attack is greatly hindered, and now black can just go ahead and take the e4 pawn if they want to be up a pawn, or black can push d5 and they can try to get rid of this bishop, whether through trading, or just simply after playing that move, it's not that one, after they play d5 they can get the bishop to drop back to e2. And then from here, black is in a very good position to continue a great attack. They have 3 minor pieces in the center, 2 central pawns, and all that white has to show for their attack is a pawn on e4 and a pawn on g5. Not very much. So already black is winning here. This is how you defend against the second variation of the Scholar's Mate. The third Scholar's Mate attack goes something like this. e4, e5, bishop c4, and in this position, if you know that your opponent's going to play the Scholar's Mate, a better move would actually be knight to c6, which is like this. But let's just say that black doesn't see that, or they're not expecting the Scholar's Mate to come, and they play bishop c5. Next we're going to see queen to h5. Now this move is widely overlooked by a lot of lower rated players, but there is still a major threat, and that is the bishop is hitting the f7 square, and so is the queen. So queen takes, f7 is checkmate. To defend against this, black has to play either queen e7 or queen f6. Both moves block the Scholar's Mate attack and nullify white's aggressive behavior. Now white can still take here, either bishop, queen, and then king takes, but this just leaves white down a full piece with hardly anything to show for it. Black already has an advantage by having a minor piece in the center of the field. You have developing moves coming, but black is in a far better position. They're up material-wise, and they also have good control of the center. So, as I said earlier, if you know the Scholar's Mate is coming, or you just prefer to play knight c6, this, in my opinion, is a little bit stronger. So you see knight c6, queen h5, and now all you have to do is play g6. But this goes into another Scholar's Mate defense, which I'm going to show later on. Here is the fourth Scholar's Mate attack. We're going to see e4, e5 again, very, very common in the Scholar's Mate attacks. This time, queen goes to h5 first. Let's say, since that is just a random move, it doesn't really do anything, black just wants to get ahead in development, and they play knight c6, an excellent developing move. We're going to see bishop goes to c4. Now white is setting up the Scholar's Mate attack on the f7 square by hitting it twice. So white wants to take with the queen, queen takes f7, checkmate. So, to defend against this, all you have to do is push g6. This forces the queen away, and there's nothing further for white to do here. So white can simply drop back to d1. And that is a defense against the fourth version of the Scholar's Mate. Here is the fifth variation of the Scholar's Mate attack. White plays e4, black plays e5, queen goes to h5, black wants to get ahead in development by playing knight c6, a good developing move, bishop goes to c4, pawn g6, but where this deviates from the previous Scholar's Mate variation is instead of the queen going all the way back to d1, which doesn't exactly do anything, let's say white still wants to go for the Scholar's Mate attack. So white goes queen to f3. This, again for a second time, hits the f7 square. The queen and the bishop are still lined up to hit the square, and they want to go queen takes f7 checkmate. So, the correct response here for black is to play knight to f6. This cuts off the queen's attack and develops another piece. Now, in this situation, white can just develop as normal, but let's say your opponent is very stubborn and they want to continue with their attack. So they're going to play g4. The idea here is to push the pawn to g5 to dislodge the knight. Once the knight moves somewhere, then the queen can simply take on f7, and that's checkmate. It's very tricky, but the easiest response and the best response in this position is to ignore the pawn for now and play knight to d4. Now this move has a double purpose. Not only does it hit the queen, but it also threatens a fork by taking on c2, and that is a fork on the rook and on the king. So the only way to defend both the queen and the c2 pawn is to play queen to d1. Now, black is up in development, they have a strong center, and they can go ahead right now and they can just take the e4 pawn. Another option that they can play is d4, opening the center and trying to gain space. Now, white can try to trade off pieces, but it doesn't exactly help them. Now black still has a strong center, and all white has to show for it is a pawn on g4. So best move for white here is to play either bishop to e2, or maybe even bishop f1 to get away from this attack, and then the pawn is going to fall, and black is in a very, very good position for the rest of the game. So I hope these different Scholar's Mate attack defenses have helped you. Be sure to memorize these down to the bone. That way, when you see these in your games, blitz games, rapid games, you'll know instantly what the best moves are to play, and you won't have to spend precious time thinking about the correct response. So if this video helped you, please leave a thumbs up on the video, consider subscribing to my YouTube channel down below, and share this video with all of your friends who want to know the correct defenses against this Scholar's Mate attack, and also their variations. Thank you so much for watching, take care, and God bless. Bye.